How's it going, everyone? We are here to break down the Week 14 slate. I'm here with my buddy Eric. Eric writes the slate breakdown for us every week. How's it going, Eric?
I'm doing good. I'm anxious to get this December football rolling. I think there's going to be some good numbers for the backs, and if you can find a game where there's some weather and some slippery conditions, maybe you get some big plays out of your receivers and quarterbacks. So I'm excited to see how this all unfolds this week.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I guess we can just kind of get into the Sunday slate. Vikings and Jaguars. Oh boy. You know, there is stuff to break down in this game, but you know, the Jaguars offense in year 3 of the Blake Bortles experiment hasn't gone as planned, you could say, huh?
Yeah, and they've turned the ball over. They haven't run the ball. Even with Chris Ivory out, TJ Yeldon really didn't take off. They got some work to do, and with this matchup, two pretty good defenses. I think you'd be surprised to see that the Jags are number 4 overall in the NFL in total defense and number 2 against the pass. And this game is two pretty good defenses facing two fairly inconsistent, if not inept, offenses. So you really have to love football to watch this game, much less play it in DFS. So you got to fade everything. Stephon Diggs and Kyle Rudolph are good, but Sam Bradford is not. That matchup is not great. You could play Jerick McKinnon or Matt Asiata for 50 yards and a touchdown, but does 50 yards and a touchdown really move the needle for you? I don't think it should. Outside of some punt plays and cash games. Allen Robinson you might like because his price is pretty low, but he draws the Xavier Rhodes goose egg that tends to prop up every week. So if I'm playing anything in this game, it's the Vikings defense against a turnover-prone Jaguars offense.
Oh, and not only turnover-prone, pick-six prone. Blake Bortles loves pick 6. So, yeah, I certainly think the Vikings defense is the prize in this game. And, you know, pretty much everything else is kind of a wash for me. Are you going to be diving into Matt Asiata or Jerick McKinnon this week? Or are you kind of just
I won't because there's low ceiling. Even if they do produce 50 yards and a touchdown, this is not going to be a loose game where their ceiling is going to be all that high. Plus, they kind of cut each other in two. So, half of a running back on a bad running team against a good defense, no thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Texans and Colts. So this is, you know, it seems like a lot of the community is projecting this to be an Andrew Luck game. I was excited about him coming into the week, maybe getting him at a discount. But with this ownership, what's your view on this game? And then we can get into that.
I'm not in love with this game. I think the Texans' pass defense is still pretty good. They held Aaron Rodgers, who was scorching hot, down pretty well. I know Andrew Luck is great at home, but the Texans are still capable, and they're still in this, and they are number 5 in the NFL against the pass. I think my most favorite play on either side is Lamar Miller against the Colts' run defense, which is bottom 10 against fantasy running backs. I know Miller hasn't been great of late. He's been dealing with the ankle issue, but this lines up as a high-volume game, both run and pass for him. So his modest price, he should get 20 carries, the season high in targets. And I guess if the Texans are going to score and the Colts don't shut people out, so they will, I figure it'll be with Miller in some way or shape or form.
I like that call. So back to the Luck discussion. You on him if he's a highly owned player this week? Are you still confident in the Texans sort of secondary, or is this kind of like full steam ahead with Luck?
No, I'm kind of cold on Luck. I know he's coming off a great performance against the Jets, but I think this is more of a 250-yard, 2-touchdown type performance for him. At his price, it's not really going to move the needle for you. I think if you're playing anything for the Colts, you got to love Dwayne Allen, who's coming off that 3 TD performance Monday, which didn't impact his price for this week. So you get some value there. I'm not in love with either wideout T.Y. Hilton or Dante Moncrief going against the Texans secondary. They've been pretty good against the pass and fantasy wideouts. So I think it's going to be a lot of Frank Gore, maybe volume and a short touchdown or two, and maybe the tight ends on either side, either CJ Fedorowicz or Dwayne Allen.
Certainly. Okay, the next game here, you got Matthew Stafford, Lions fighting to. This is kind of the time of year where the Lions always seem to average out. Either they make a run to get to 8-8 or they fall off big time. Big game last week, they won it. I think they're still fighting really hard to turn history here. I think they're gonna, bring out a pretty good effort here. What are you looking at in this game against the Bears, who, you've been talking about this for, 10 weeks now. Bears defense, not bad.
Yeah, it's a John Fox defense. So
yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they held a red-hot Colin Kaepernick to 4 passing yards. 4. Yeah. That's not 4 fantasy points. That's 4 passing yards. That is ridiculous. So I'm actually in love with the Lions defense on value. They went into New Orleans and slowed down Breeze and the Saints. What are they going to do to a Matt Barkley-led Bears offense playing at home? And I think it just lines up perfectly for the Lions defense play. And when you look at the Lions, they are one of the best teams in fantasy at holding running backs from touchdowns. So everybody who loves Jordan Howard after that huge performance against the Niners can just punt on him here because he's not getting in the end zone. I don't think he'll get even 75 yards, much less 103 touchdowns. So fading everything on the Bears, going with the Lions defense. I don't actually love a lot of the Lions plays because I do appreciate the Bears defense. I guess if you're going with anyone, you go with Theo Riddick for a passing score. And then, with the wide receivers, everybody's going to love Golden Tate after that performance in New Orleans. But playing on the New Orleans turf is different than playing in the Lions turf against the Bears. So I think this is going to be a bit of a disappointing game if you're stacking Lions, but going with the defense is a wise play.
I like that call. Yeah, Matt Barkley, he's been starter for 2 weeks now, already, second in red zone interceptions. So there's that, they just don't have much talent on the outside either. So he's working with less than talent. Could get ugly there for sure. And could get ugly for the Browns, Bengals Browns, no AJ Green, no Gio Bernard, but I think we still like the Bengals to kind of figure things out here, right?
Well, I think the Bengals were very impressive last week against a good Eagles defense, and you have to assume they're going to be very good against an awful Browns defense. Jeremy Hill is our favorite running back player of the week. It should be, at least. He should get 20-plus carries against the Browns defense. He torched for 168 yards and a touchdown on just 9 carries when they had Giovanni Bernard. If you total the numbers that Bernard and Hill put up against the Browns in that last meeting, you're going to love what Jeremy Hill does for you this week. Don't miss out on that opportunity. Also, Tyler Eifert, he's been performing pretty well with AJ Green down. So Eifert should get some TD opportunities with all the times that Jeremy Hill moves the team into scoring position in the red zone. I'm not in love with Andy Dalton for a 303 effort, but coming off of what he did last week, he made Brandon LaFell and Tyler Boyd 2 pretty decent DFS options. This defense of the Browns is not going to scare you. One thing I also like about this game is I'm intrigued to see what Robert Griffin III will do in his return. And what does he do for Terrell Pryor, Corey Coleman, Gary Barnidge, and even Duke Johnson? So if I truly believe, which I do, Jeremy Hill and Tyler Eifert carry the Bengals to a big win, I should like Pryor, Coleman, and Barnidge and Duke Johnson in some garbage time.
Oh, interesting. I kind of like this take. I hadn't really thought much about the Browns this week, but yeah, they announced, they pulled Robert Griffin off IR, starting to think about starting him this week. Certainly could be intriguing in comeback mode. We've seen this multiple times from the Browns this year where either Barnidge or Duke Johnson gets those catches in the last minute. Could be Corey Coleman, not efficient per target this year, but if they keep throwing up deep balls, the one thing you can't take away from Robert Griffin is he has a beautiful deep ball. that he will always have. So I do like that.
And he has moxie. These other quarterbacks they've been rolling out there are kind of like, skittish. And Robert Griffin III, he's not going to be skittish like that. He's going to attack and go for it.
Certainly. So I think that's an interesting game to at least look into. Certainly with Dalton and Eifert, though. Chargers Panthers. Just like every Chargers game, I feel like I say this every week. Phillip Rivers, he's going to be tossing the ball over the field, making great plays, getting guys wide open. Chargers are going to be moving down the field. And then just weird things start to happen. This feels like a weird game to me. What's your read on here?
Weird game, but I'm actually optimistic that this game gets a little loose. I think both sides have weapons on offense and both defenses have some issues in the secondary that can make this a pretty wild game. Luke Kuechly's return does make you pause on Melvin Gordon, but I think Melvin Gordon's going to impact the passing game and be a red zone threat. So Phillip Rivers, Melvin Gordon, red hot Tyrell Williams, 4 touchdowns this past 4. Either tight end, Gates or Henry, you can throw that all in there. And then the Panthers side, I love Greg Olsen playing at home, coming off 2 modest games. I think it's 3 modest games now. Cam Newton, a little bit of rebound here. Greg Olsen, I even think Kelvin Benjamin can rebound. I even think Jonathan Stewart can get a touchdown or 2. I think this is going to be a wild game for DFS points. This is a good place to put your plays because the values are low and the values are high relative to price. And I think the numbers are going to be optimistically good.
Interesting. Okay, so would you be looking at like Cam Newton this week as sort of a guy that could rebound off a really bad week? I mean, I look for that stuff a lot where teams get blown out in prime time and you're like, okay, lower ownership this week. Certainly going to be lower ownership on Cam this week. So is that something you may be looking at? I don't know
about lower ownership because his price is so low and he's back at home and the matchup's favorable. I'm not sure about low ownership, but the price is favorable.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Greg Olsen, Kelvin Benjamin, Devin Funchess, Ted Ginn, Philly
not
Brown.
Not the auxiliary pieces. I like the primary ones. Newton, Greg Olsen, and Benjamin here.
I'm trying to think of some vintage Panthers players from back in the day, like Wesley Walls or something like that.
Ricky Prohl.
Ricky Prohl. Yeah. Ricky Prohl is going to come in and catch a 5-yard fade on Sunday. So Melvin Gordon, you're okay with him?
Not in love with the play, but he's going to get volume and he's going to get red zone opportunities. And if this game goes the way I anticipate, there's going to be points on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Cardinals and Dolphins, 2 teams that are just super inconsistent. Dolphins at home, you wonder if they're going to be able to run against this team. But obviously the Cardinals secondary a little banged up. What are you looking at from these 2 offenses?
Well, I think a lot of optimism is on the Cardinals and Carson Palmer. Joe Flacco, who hasn't been a touchdown machine this year, threw 4 touchdowns against those Dolphins. Palmer's coming off a pretty good game. He's got David Johnson, who even when they slow him running the football, he's a monster catching it. And I think he has 4 receiving touchdowns in each of the past receiving TD in each of the past 4 weeks. So a lot to love about Carson Palmer, David Johnson stack. Then therefore you could throw in Larry Fitzgerald, who gets high volume. You got Jermaine Gresham at a cheap price, getting pretty good targets. And the Dolphins are 6th worst against fantasy tight ends. So I love all of it on the Cardinals side. And the line recently gone, even though the Cardinals are on the road and having a disappointing season, has recently gone in the Cardinals' favor. So road favorite slightly. I'm loving a lot of Cardinals. They are still the number 2 defense in football to the Baltimore Ravens. And that number 1 defense, the Ravens, they absolutely embarrassed the Dolphins last week. So Cardinals defense is a good play. Punt Jay Ajayi against the Cardinals run defense. They're number 2 against fantasy running backs. The Bengals offensive line is getting healthier, but it's not like it was when Ajayi was breaking off 200-yard games earlier this year. So If I'm playing anything, it's because I truly believe in the Cardinals in this one. It'll be Jarvis Landry getting garbage time on the other side.
Yeah, and Larry Fitzgerald putting together another great year from the slot. Obviously not coming up with those huge downfield plays like he used to because they just have him in such a different role. But especially on DraftKings, I mean, this dude's been getting tons of targets all year. John Brown's been hurt. Michael Floyd's been hurt. He's just kind of an interesting guy,
Yeah, he gets volume. And also in that passing game, increasing volume on Gresham with John Brown, Michael Floyd being a kind of a bum, J.J. Nelson not really taking hold of the number 2 receiver spot. So it's kind of Fitzgerald and Gresham when David Johnson's not getting the ball.
Yeah, and David Johnson, fade him at 9,800 on DK, or are you still firing away?
He's too,
load up. Yeah, me too.
He's too beastly.
Yeah. Yep.
The Dolphins actually, despite not giving up that many rushing TDs, are the 3rd worst run defense in football still. So Johnson's going to have some easy points in a heavy volume.
Steelers at Bills. So I guess I'll start off where I started off the week, kind of pondering the Steelers defense. They've been hot of late. Yeah. Do you like them to shut down the Bills running game, or is this a game, if they don't, maybe this is a game that both sides can get a little loose. But what's your take on that?
Well, last week you saw the Bills and the Raiders go off in a little shootout there, but this is not one of them. This game's going to be played rock'em sock'em in the cold, running games, 2 heavy volume running backs going at it. Not in love with the receivers on either side. Even that's including Antonio Brown. The Bills secondary is number 8 against the pass, and that's number 8 after that awful start that they had. So I think there's modest numbers in the passing game for the Steelers. Heavy volume on Le'Veon Bell, heavy volume on LaShawn McCoy. I do like the defensive improvement for the Steelers, but the Bills are the type of offense that plays too conservative, and I think they'll play very conservative in this, like I said, rock'em sock'em running game. This is going to be a defensive struggle more than a shootout.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. You look at Ben Roethlisberger home road splits becoming the biggest narrative of the season, but there is some truth to it, So I think that's interesting. I love Brown and Bell, but I think beyond that, probably going to be a little light on exposure from me. I will ask you about one more guy, Ladarius Green.
Yeah.
Obviously coming off the big week. Are you in on him for this week, or is this something you're kind of like, he could be good, but at the same time?
I actually love what he did last week, and I loved his potential all year because Roethlisberger just needed a second downfield option. Antonio Brown is just too heavily focused on offensively and defensively with the attention he gets in coverage. So Ladarius Green was going to eventually erupt, or someone as a number 2 option in that passing game, particularly with the finger issue of Eli Rogers of late. So I love Ladarius Green. I just don't love him this week against the Bills in a game I think is going to play a lot slower than even that Giants game did a week ago.
Yeah, and that's kind of my take as well. I like Green. I like what he did. I think we might have to tone down our exposure to him a little bit this week. I think there will be better matchups where we can take advantage of it later in the year.
One thing I will say about the Bills Steelers is it's Buffalo, it's December. You might get weather. So if it's not freezing rain, which I think will kind of freeze the offenses up a little, if it's snow, it might make a little bit more because that snow could stick, and it could make the slippery conditions a little more favorable to Brown and Green going off downfield. But
right, absolutely.
That's an if that I wouldn't be playing in DFS.
Oh no. Yeah, not an if I want to live in either. Not an if world I want to live in. Broncos and Titans, a really interesting matchup from a Titans offense standpoint. Obviously, you don't like the passing weapons against this Broncos team, but do you think they can run on them? What do you think?
I do. I do think they can run. I think DeMarco Murray is going to get real heavy volume. The Titans are in this, and they're gonna really ride what what they're good at, and they're good at DeMarco Murray and their running game. He comes out of us to a nice price because the Broncos are a scary defense, but that's hiding the fact on the stat sheet they're fifth worst against the run, and they've given up the ninth most points to fantasy running backs. So I like not only DeMarco Murray, I even like backup running back Derrick Henry because he's getting more touches and goal line work. So if they bottle up Murray and force him to be more of a pass receiving running back, Henry can pound him in the red zone. I like both running backs against the Broncos front. And in the game, I think if you're going with the Broncos, you got to punt on the running game. Devontae Booker averaging just 3.4 yards per carry. It's so bad right now that a guy off the street, Justin Forte, might be a impactful player in their run game, run heavy scheme. The opportunities to me are the downfield guys, but I just can't trust Trevor Siemian playing. And if he does play, how well does he play?
Yeah, Sanders is at a pretty interesting price across the board. I have to look at him. I'm probably going to have to play him in some lineups. But again, if Paxton Lynch is in there, we're just not loving the way, that team is moving the ball right now. It's certainly ugly. I do think Murray's going to be able to move the ball. But, yeah, Devontae Booker really got a golden opportunity this year to take advantage of, taking the reins of this Broncos offense and really becoming a big rookie impact. Hasn't happened. They bring in Justin Forte. Broncos offense reeling for sure. Might be able to do something against the Titans, but yeah. Are you interested in the
defense? Though.
Yeah, are you interested in the Broncos defense at all?
It's intriguing because they're good. However, I think the Titans can move the ball, and I think they can score points, and they are at home. So I'm probably going to fade the defense in this one.
Fair enough. Redskins Eagles, interesting matchup here. I think a lot of people are going to be excited about this Redskins offense, with or without Jordan Reed. What's your read on this game?
Read on this game. I'm actually loving Rob Kelly's price. He's just too favorably priced for us to ignore. He's going to get heavy volume. The Redskins are in this. They're gonna pound the back against the Eagles. I know the Eagles are pretty good defensively at home, but there should be scoring opportunities. Cousins going to move the ball. Kelly can get the finishing touches in the red zone and at the goal line. Downfield, it kind of hinges on the health of Jordan Reed and what you think whether he's going to play and how effective he will be. If you think he's going to be effective, which I'm kind of skeptical, you got to like Kirk Cousins as a value play. And probably fade the receivers Crowder, who's recently hot. If Reed is out, then you got to like Vernon Davis's price. I'm just thinking there's too many variables up in the air for me to like really anything other than Rob Kelly for the Redskins. On the Eagles side, I'm actually liking the fact that Ryan Matthews could return because his price is now near the basement, and if they haven't fallen in love with Wendell Smallwood and they kind of just cast off Darren Sproles after one point saying he was going to be their starter, I think Ryan Matthews' price and matchup against Redskins run defense is pretty good one here.
Yeah, if Jordan Reed doesn't play, I'm interested in Vernon Davis. If Reed does play, it kind of takes the air out of that balloon a little bit. Zach Ertz, someone that's getting pelted with targets of late. Are you interested in him at all?
I do like it. It's just I'm more apt in this game to trust the quarterback, and I can't trust Wentz. I know Ertz is getting high volume, but I trust Cousins and whichever tight end is going to be starting for him better.
Mm-hmm. Next game here, a week after kind of a brutal home performance for the Saints in fantasy football, head on the road to the Buccaneers. If all things go well, should be a high-scoring game. What are you looking at from this game? What do you like? What do you maybe not like?
Well, I think a lot of people are liking a high-scoring game, and I can't trust the Saints after what they did last week. And then going on a road to a Tampa defense that's actually been playing pretty well. The line suggests a Drew Brees, Jameis Winston shootout. And, Las Vegas is richer than me. So I'm going to, I guess, look at that. And with rookie wide receiver Michael Thomas out, maybe there's some more opportunity downfield for Brandon Cooks or maybe a Kobe Fleener. I think the obvious play is Mike Evans because he's always an obvious play. And, Cameron Brate has been much better of late. He's getting volume and red zone looks. So if you believe this line, you should believe that there will be production on Winston, Evans, and Brate, maybe even 110 yards on a touchdown, if not 2, for the lost man, the muscle hamster, Doug Martin.
There you go. I like that call. Yeah, and you kind of mentioned in the article here, Brandon Cooks and Kobe Fleener are going to be the possible plays. Michael Thomas, might not play this weekend. Who's your favorite target price considered out of that, receiving group?
I guess it would be Brandon Cooks, but I don't love him on grass. I don't love him on the road. So I'm kind of, going against Las Vegas and thinking this game's probably not going to be as wide open as they anticipate. But you know what? Vegas is richer than me. So, there's some opportunities there. I will say if, Mark Ingram with this banged up toe and facing a Bucs run defense is actually in the past 4 weeks, their 4-game winning streak, they've been playing very good against fantasy running backs. They're in the top 5 in the past 4. So maybe Tim Hightower is a guy to get volume in the passing game.
There you go. Like that call. Yeah, I like Mike Evans. I like Jameis Winston. Again, I think we might want to be a little careful with the Saints passing game this week, which is a weird thing to say. I don't remember saying that much this year. Jets 49ers, there's being careful and then there's being sad. And I think that's what we're going to be in this game. Just a lot of sadness. Robbie Anderson and, a 300 receiving yard Torrey Smith leading the receiving course here. So what are you looking at here?
Well, I would ordinarily say, this is all garbage, but Matt Forte facing that 49ers run defense that is so bad. They are so dead last. They're deader than last against fantasy running backs against the run. You got to love Forte for 100 yards and multiple touchdowns. Particularly with Bryce Petty in the game at quarterback, it's going to force volume on the running game in a matchup where the running game shouldn't have much difficulty. So a great day for Forte plays. If you're going 49ers, I guess if you like anything on the 49ers, it'd be Carlos Hyde. But the Jets, as bad as they are, and with so many teams just running out the clock on them, they're still number 4 against the run. So I'm not excited about Carlos Hyde. I guess you can jump back on Kaepernick's bandwagon. Maybe he does a 250 and 2 with 50 yards rushing and a touchdown at a decent price. But last week you probably tried to play that trick and you got 4 passing yards out of him. I'm more apt to go with a Vance McDonald play or maybe a Hail Mary to Jeremy Curley than anything else on the 49ers side.
Yeah, you mentioned Matt Forte. I like how you made the emphasis on the 49ers run D. I feel like everyone should do that when they talk about the 49ers run defense. It's not just like, oh, they're last in the league. It's like, holy crap. They're like
they are so bad.
Historically bad. Not just last. They're not just last this year. They're last in like the last 20 years. So it's like that bad. So obviously, yeah, Forte is the guy I think you're really looking at here. Kaepernick could be a bounce back guy that you'll get super low ownership after last week, which you mentioned. So yeah, I think those are interesting ways to go. Falcons bringing up guys from the practice squad for receivers today. It looks like Muhammad Sanu is going to be out. Julio Jones, pretty questionable. We've seen him play that, distraction role a few times this year.
I think he'll play.
What are you looking at in this game, I guess?
I think the the Falcons stack is not as stacky as it usually is when it's playing at home. And you're looking at the Rams, who they've actually been pretty good at home against quarterbacks. They haven't given up jack squat, as I said in my story here, against quarterbacks. The worst home effort against the quarterback, Ryan Tannehill went 172-1. Actually, I think that might be 172-2, so I got to fix that. But that's pretty depressing numbers. But Matt Ryan's going to trump that. He could go 250-3, no matter who they're throwing out there at receiver. Devontae Freeman is hot on the ground. Tevin Coleman's going to get volume in the passing game out of the backfield. Freeman's going to get volume out of the backfield. I'd kind of trust the fact that Jones will get 100 yards and a touchdown. So if anything on this, I'm going the Falcons stack. Now, a lot of people will look at the Falcons against quarterbacks and the Falcons against receivers and the Falcons against running backs. But as much excitement as you could try to muster in the Rams offense, I just can't do it on Todd Gurley. I've long since given up on him, the offensive line, the running game. They don't give him a volume even because the Rams can't mount anything long enough to actually get him 20 carries a game. So I'm not in love with the Rams side.
That really is the point of it. It's not that they don't want to give him 20 carries. It's just that they don't have the opportunity to. They can't. They're down. They're just down every week. They can't ride him, and I'm going to, you can hear it in my voice. I'm a little upset. I'm angry. It's not going well for my boy. Not only are the Rams not only am I a fan of the Rams, but now they took one of my favorite players and prospects ever, and they're just savagely hurting his career. And it's frustrating. I can't play him at this point. I mean, I get why you'd want to play him in GPPs, but it's tough. It's tough to even think of ways that it's going to be good for him. So tough.
I will say, one saving grace for your Rams fandom is the lack of carries and volume that they give them is actually saving wear and tear for when they actually might compete 5-6 years from now.
I like this spin right now. I like this spin. You can tell you're right. You're right for some politics because you're making me feel better about my sad case right now. Matt Ryan, as you mentioned, not going to be the same type of stacking you normally see. Taylor Gabriel kind of in and around the fantasy points there. But I also think you can stack him with Devontae Freeman, stack him with Tevin Coleman. There's going to be points here from the Falcons. We just don't really know how they're going to get it. So I do think that's interesting. Coleman's kind of been down ever since he came back from injury. Interesting GPP guy. But if Julio does play, I think you make a good point. It's certainly worth a shot in a GPP, even if you kind of know he's limited. It's still Julio. If he gets 8 targets, I trust him with 8 targets pretty much more than, most receivers in the league, even if he's hurt.
Yeah.
Seahawks and Packers. Aaron Rodgers, big game? Big game for A-Rod?
Like what we saw last week against the Texans, another very good pass defense. Rodgers had modest numbers. I think this game, as exciting as it is with star-studded stars on both sides of the ball for both teams, I think this is going to be a disappointment in DFS and a game that I'm actually going to fade. As bad as the Packers are in the secondary, the Seahawks struggle to throw the ball downfield on the road. As bad as the Seahawks run game has been, or as promising as it has looked of late, the Packers are still top 10 against the run. So I think the matchups make this game, kind of whittled down to modest numbers on both sides. If you're going with volume, I think Thomas Rawls, after what he showed last week, maybe not in the run game, but maybe the combination of the pass and scoring at the goal line. Jimmy Graham, a volume play. I don't love Russell Wilson's track record on the road, though. And then Rodgers has a hamstring issue, which might not hold him back as much as the fact that you're facing the Seahawks secondary and you probably expect him to more go 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. as opposed to 303. So I'm going to fade Nelson, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, Christine Michael, James Starks, the coaching staff.
The organization, the fans,
the owner, the stockholders.
Everyone's out. You're out. I'm a little more willing to take chances on the Packers this week. I think this is an interesting game for them. Must win. But Seahawks defense, even without Earl Thomas, is still going to be pretty good. So I do think this is an interesting game. Wilson, Baldwin, Graham, I do like. You have to worry about what they did against the Buccaneers a few weeks ago, though. You can't expect them to go in there and do what they've been doing to other teams at home. So there is that data point that says, hey, this O-line's still bad. So be aware. But I do think, this is an interesting GPP game. Really, I love these primetime games this week. If you're playing slates that have these, it's going to be a fun one. Cowboys and Giants, and I suppose I say that from a real fantasy sense. Actually, might be tough sledding for Zeke Elliott for the first time in a while.
Well, this is the one team all season that's held him under 83 yards rushing. That's a season low, is 83 compared to
unbelievable.
The one time that he faced the Giants, he went for 51. But that was his first ever game in the NFL. So I think you're going to assume this is going to be a heavy dose of Ezekiel Elliott. If they win this game, they clinch the NFC East and basically ride out the rest of the month and save Elliott's legs for the postseason. So I think they're going to pound the Giants. Even though the Giants are number 5 against the run, they're going to pound him with Elliott 25 times, target him 5 times in the passing game. Elliott. And then, Des Bryant off play action, 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. He's a big difference in this game because he wasn't available the last time they played in week 1. So I'm fading Dak Prescott. I'm fading Jason Witten, despite the fact he is a Giant killer. And then when you look on the Giants side, the Cowboys are number 3 against fantasy running backs. So, and the Giants really haven't shown much interest in establishing a running game with Rashad Jennings or even Paul Perkins. So it'll be a heavy volume game on the pass. And if you think that the Ezekiel Elliott high volume ball control offense will work and score points, you have to assume you can see Eli Manning throwing for 3 touchdowns as he did in the week 1 matchup. So I think that makes us like the values of Sterling Shepard and maybe even a Victor Cruz looking off of the coverage that Odell Beckham gets. But if you're playing primetime games, there's no one better than Odell Beckham, so he has to be in your primetime lineup. I think Eli Manning does get 3 touchdowns. So
we've seen a lot of wide open touchdowns for Giants secondary receivers this year, where teams just aren't worried about them, especially Sterling Shepard. But I think that threat is there, especially against this Cowboys secondary. I do like Odell Beckham. Are you playing Dak at all this week, or are you just kind of
This is a good week to fade Dak because of the volume that's going to be on the running game. And I think the Giants defense, even without Jason Pierre-Paul, can get after the passer and protect downfield. They got 2 pretty good corners.
Yep. So fun real game, really important game. But
2 good corners, a great safety in Landon Collins, who's emerged, and a very good nickel corner that's emerging too in Eli Apple. So a lot to like about the Giants secondary.
Yeah, certainly. Finishing it off on Monday, Ravens, Patriots, no Gronk. What are we looking at from this Patriots team? I don't know if you're like me. I don't know that I'm expecting a ton from the Ravens, but Patriots really, is there something here or no?
I actually love this game on the Patriots side. They're a 7-point favorite by Las Vegas. And I cannot, for the life of me, consider a scenario where the Ravens actually go into New England in primetime and beat the Patriots in an important game for both teams. I think the Patriots are going to be a team I load up on. I think, without Gronk, it's going to be a lot of Martellus Bennett, Julian Edelman. I think Deion Lewis is going to get involved, 5 catches and a touchdown. Malcolm Mitchell has been very involved. I think you could even like Chris Hogan to get involved. LeGarrette Blount, while running against the number 1 ranked defense and the number 1 run defense of the Ravens, isn't good. I think Blount will still get a short TD touchdown and short TD plunge in there. So I like a lot of the Patriots stuff. Not in love with the Ravens. The Patriots defense is number 6 against fantasy running backs, and if there's one thing that you can count on the Ravens do, it's pound the ball with Terrence West and Kenneth Dixon. But those two timeshare guys are kind of cutting each other in two against a very good Patriots run defense. So I'm not in love with the Ravens side. And after what Flacco did last week, 381 and 4, the Patriots are just not going to do that. They're top 10 against fantasy receivers and tight ends. So Dennis Pitta, fade him. Steve Smith, Mike Wallace, throw it all out. This is a big game for the Pats.
Certainly agree. Pretty interesting game. I think you're going to get relatively low ownership. I know it's the Patriots, but people are afraid of this Ravens D at this point. So could be some interesting tournament guys there for sure. Rolling through the slates here, is there anything you want to throw out there before we head out for the week?
No, I will just say watch the weather. The places that get windy are particularly troublesome for the passing, but the snow shouldn't scare you. The snow should excite you, because if the snow sticks, makes for slippery conditions for defenders. And anytime you're playing, quick twitch movements in the passing game, a receiver knows where he's going, and a defender has to react. So the reaction time and the slipping in the snow is more likely to be on the defense than the offense. So people think that snow is bad for fantasy points. I tend to like it.
Agreed. Like that call. Anyhow, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you want to read the article, head over to dailyfantasycafe.com. Check that out on the site. If you like this video and like what we're doing here, give us a like and subscribe. As always, good luck with your lineups. Well, a little bit of luck, just not better than me. One less point than me. Is how I roll. But as always, good luck this week, and we will see you guys in week 15.